Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cliff Guerin. I am a senior career advisor here at WGU's Career and Professional Development Center. Today, we're going to be presenting on resumes, kind of best practices of resumes, and we'll go through some material that employers and recruiters will be looking for, and maybe answer some questions you have concerning maybe your own resume development. So we like to put this up for folks to see because even though this is being recorded, you may need to get up, move around. If you're at work, you may be called out of your office or whatever the case may be. So please, if you need to get up and take care of yourself, please do so. You will get the recording, so you can always go back to visit something you might have missed. And then any questions or any follow-up you would like to make contact with our office, the quickest way to do that would be to email us at careers@wgu.edu, and you'll have that information at the end of the presentation. So what we will be covering today will be the applicant tracking systems. We'll do a resume walkthrough. We'll do some do's and don'ts of resumes. We'll look at a job description and how the job descriptions can help you write your resume, and then any follow-up questions you may have at the end of our presentation. So the applicant tracking systems, I hope that most of you have heard of these and you know what they are. But just as a real quick key summary, most employers use some way of collecting applicants. They're collecting all of your materials, your resume, cover letters. They will scan them to maybe create a contact list of applicants for a particular job. So it's creating a database. It's also sort of assessing your resume. This system is the best way employers can use today. So if there are two jobs available at a company and they get hundreds of applicants, which is very possible, they may get 2 or 3 applicants for maybe only 1 or 2 jobs. Well, it's logistically very difficult, if not impossible, to go through all of those application materials for just those couple of jobs. So these applicant tracking systems were created and programmed to do the work instead. So a lot of them today will obviously be incorporating AI software, AI processing when it comes to evaluating applicants for best fit for the company, best fit for the job. Are you even qualified? Are you just applying to whatever's open? Things of that sort. Now, 2 critical things to keep in mind when you're creating your resume or you're going to be editing your resume based on what we just talked about as far as using AI and any applicant tracking system is to make sure that your resume is not over formatted. And what I mean by that is, if you can see this, this copy of the resume, there's a picture, there's a big dark bar on the right side or the left side of the page. There are little icons for contact information. There are columns. His name is big, oversized. So all of these things do factor in to the resume. Even before they start reading the content, they're going to look at the format. And so you want to make sure that your resume gets through those applicant tracking systems and nothing is in the way of saying, hey, I think this is spam. Hey, I can only do what I'm programmed to do, and this looks like it might be fake news or something. And that's so I'm going to kick it out of the running. So you want to make sure the best way to do this is just to use a regular Word document. We have templates, and I'm going to show you where to find those templates if you want a jump start on the best way to format this. You're not going to get an interview to you're not going to get an invitation to an interview because you have your picture on the resume, or because you're using bright colors, or because you found a cool looking template. if you're not putting the right keywords and the right information, and if the system can't read it because of these extra formatting sparkles and doodads, it's not going to get it to the right person. So you want to make sure that you're going to just be able to focus on, is it professional looking? Is it clean? Is it ready to read? Is it easy to find information? That's going to get you a lot farther, especially with trying to get your resume into the hands of a recruiter or hiring manager. So scanning those keywords from the job descriptions, having that good match rate is really going to be one of the first important steps to keep in mind when you're creating or you're editing your current resume. So as another layer of reinforcing this, a lot of folks will say, well, why not? I mean, there's so many templates out there. Some look pretty good. Aren't those ATS scans, and if they're AI driven, aren't they more intuitive? Wouldn't they be more smart to get through and ignore those pictures and the colors and the bars? It might, but are you willing to take that chance, hoping that it might get through, when you know if you present your Word document resume and it's built for the job that you're applying to, you have a better chance of surviving those. PDFs are not going to be a good answer because a lot of applicant tracking systems today can't read through a PDF. When we ask you to send a resume in for a review, we ask for a Word document because we can't review a PDF. We can't write inside that. We can't put review notes for you to work on. So just keep it simple, keep it straightforward. A good Word document, avoid using columns, colors, tables, text boxes are terrible. You can't work with those as well. Headers and footers, they can't read inside of those because it's going to be very similar to a text box. Just keep it straightforward. That's going to be your best bet by using a clean Word document. Now, a lot of this, again, is going to be a little bit backed up by folks that are saying, what about AI today? Those, what about all the ways that maybe AI can help me? Chat GPT, is that legitimate or is it cheating? I say it's going to help you. But there are some things to keep in mind about using ChatGPT if you're trying to get a jump start on writing the summary of qualifications at the top of your resume, for example. So it can be used as a time saver. It can be a really good way to start from scratch, get a baseline of where your resume is. But once you get that done, then you need to take it and you need to tailor it in your own voice, using your own wording based on the job descriptions. Don't have it built and then just use it as is, because there are a lot of still some bugs within AI and ChatGPT. One is called bias. So sometimes, depending on how it's programmed by humans. So depending on how those are programmed, depending on how ChatGPT interprets your prompting questions, create me a one-page resume as a software developer specializing in Python. Well, it may be straightforward, but there may also be some errors in there for whatever reason. So that's why you want to proofread your resume, have somebody else proofread it. Oh, by the way, we do resume reviews, but there's a process. Now I'm going to share with you what that process is to have your resume reviewed by our team here at Career Professional Development. That'll be some good feedback that you can get from us. I'm also going to share with you some of the other free online platforms that can scan and treat your resume almost as though they were an applicant tracking system. It'll grade your resume. It'll give you recommendations. It will help you maybe with additional links and resources. Some really good stuff is happening out there, and we do advocate that you use it, but then you want to do what I call high tech, high touch. The high tech is using these resources. The high touch is let us help you by having human eyes and human hands to review your resume for any additional things that might have gotten lost. Here are the tools that I talked about. I don't know if these are going to be applicable when you get the, when you get what I wanted to share with you. So let me go back and try to find the links to help you identify these, and I'll put them in the chat for you and help you to identify that. Let me go back to it in case you wanted to write them down. Sorry about that. I don't know why I'm jumping ahead somewhere. Hang in there. Don't get dizzy. There we go. All right. If you want to write those down, then you might be able to go into to use those. I say JobScan is pretty good. It's jobscan.co. I'll put that in the analytics. Has been told that has been good to use. So that's there. Resi.ai is not bad to use. Kick Resume is another recommendation. So these are just various ones you can give it a try to see if that might be helpful for you. See, those might work out. Now, when it comes to the resume itself, if we were to look at a model, and again, this is just a sample, so yours may be organized a little differently depending on your degree program. I'll share with you some examples verbally that I've encountered with my work with students. But at the top, you want to have obviously your name, first name, last name. It doesn't have to be in all caps. In fact, I say use a mixed case, lowercase, capitalized first and last name. You obviously want to have your contact information. So phone number, email. If you have a LinkedIn account, you can have your LinkedIn URL there. That's optional, but it's another way to get yourself out there on the digital playing field. Then that professional summary has a really, I think, in my opinion, as a resume writer, it has an important place on your resume because it starts to tell your story. You want to be a description of not just how your skills are relevant to the industry, but how are your experiences relevant to the job you're applying to. Don't tell me just what you did, but how did you do it? That obviously is going to include your specific expertise, your relevant skills. That could be technical skills, programming languages if you're in the IT college, clinical experiences if you're in healthcare or teaching. If you're in business, then it could be some specific business attributes that you bring that you want to get the attention of the recruiter based on the job description. Now, I said that there are some gray areas here, and one of those gray areas is that if you're coming from the IT School of Technology, then you might want to have a section that highlights your technical skills. Databases, programming languages, operating systems, software languages. That could be its own standalone section that you include. It could also be for healthcare. If you're in the nursing program, informatics, and you have specific clinical expertise, you can also have a section that highlights those expert skills you want to communicate. And then your professional experience. You can start with a blurb that talks about your role and then go into your bullet points. But you definitely also obviously want to include your job title, the company, and the city and state. And then to the far right of the page, you want to put the dates. The reason for that is that when I get a resume, if I were a hiring manager, I'm going to go down the edge, that right edge of the page, just to make sure that your dates are all in chronological order, or I'm sorry, reverse chronological order, and also that there are no gaps. Now, if you have a gap in your work history, let's say more than a year or two, since the pandemic, a lot of recruiters have become much more lenient and understanding that you could have a gap, of a year if you're, transitioning to a different career, if you are or were doing, sometimes I've had students say that they relocated and that caused a gap in their employment. It's not going to be as much of a red flag as it used to be. But if you do have 2, 3, 4 year gap, then you'll want to put in a placeholder. Some people are in military service, so they're returning from active duty, and so they might put in their military service with the U.S. Marine Corps overseas, date, year to year, date to date. If you're a stay-at-home parent, then you could put that there. Stay-at-home parents, city, state, the dates, and then maybe did you do something that is adding to your knowledge, your professional development? Attended 3 workshops on business and business and project management. Something like that is a good thing to include. So your bullet points will be those items that will go into more detail as far as don't tell me what you did, but how did you do it? If you can show metrics or analyze any kind of measurement, like I have at the bottom, 2 bottom bullet points, that's good. It's not required, but it really pops out when employers want to say, how did you find success? How do you measure your success in the job that you had? That's one of the good ways to do that, is to show some kind of metric. So the bottom, you can see the formula that we often use is when you're doing a bullet point or an accomplishment statement, you want to start with an action verb. Don't just say what your responsibility was or duties included. That's really kind of static. You want to give a good sample of an action verb. And we do have a list of action verbs that are on our resources, and I'll show you where that is. Plus, you'll get that in the email as well. So an action verb, the task that you were assigned, and then the result. That's a good formula to help create these accomplishment statements. Now, obviously at the bottom of your resume, you'll have your education section. And it could be, I would just keep it as your education section. Don't include it with training or certifications. Have those as separate sections. Are best to break that up a little bit. But this is what the education section would look like. You have your degree title. Use the full degree title. Don't just say bachelor's degree in technology. Bachelor of Science in Software Engineering. Bachelor of Arts in Elementary Education. Spell it all out. And then again, the expected date of your graduation to the right side of the page. Then the next line would be your school and the city and state. So if you're a WGU, it doesn't matter where you live, but our headquarters is in Salt Lake City. So you'll put Western Governors University, Salt Lake City, Utah. You don't have to put remotes or anything like that. If you want to highlight some courses you've taken, just to give this a little bit more emphasis, just use maybe no more than 3, 4, or 5 of your higher classes or hire courses that were relevant to the job description. That's your best bet. If you want to include a capstone, if you had a capstone project and it's relevant to the job you're applying to, then that would be good to include as well. And then if you have a master's degree, you always include your bachelor's, regardless of what the topic was. But that's not the same if you are getting your bachelor's degree, you just only include your bachelor's degree. Don't include an associate's degree, and obviously don't include high school. Now, there's always the question of how far back should I go on my resume? And the typical accepted number is usually 10 to 15 years, or a high school, whichever comes first. So even if it's not relevant to your new career pivot, if you will, or your new career step, employers want to know, but do you have a work ethic? Do you have a work history? Even if it's not relevant to what you're doing, you won't go into numbers of bullet points, but at least we'll see that you held a job during those times. Otherwise, if it only looks like you've been working for 2 or 3 years, that in and of itself could work against you. And then the question is, how long should my resume be? You can have a resume that's 2 pages. It could be 1.5 pages. It could be 2 pages, but you'll want to make that second page just as relevant as the first page, if at all possible. There are always areas of gray when we're dealing with this. I've had all kinds of scenarios where folks have had, yeah, but I had this, or yeah, but here's my situation. That's when that kind of detail might be best if you had an appointment with our team to talk about these mitigating circumstances, or you were explaining it in an email when you have your resume reviewed. So if anybody falls into that category, we do this every day. And so we're very glad and happy to help you with trying to understand how to work with special circumstances when it comes to your work history and your resume. So some quick do's and don'ts. Some of this might be a review of what we just covered. But obviously, you don't want to have a title for your resume. I've been seeing that a little bit more often. So if you're going in for a project management, you don't have to put project management on your resume as a title. But obviously, you'll have it as a job title, or you'll have it in your summary of qualifications, but it's not the title of the document. Choose a classic font like Calibri or Arial, Verdana. Those are called sans serif fonts. They're easier to read. You can use Times New Roman, and that's perfectly acceptable. But a sans serif font is a little bit easier to read. If I'm skimming the resume and I'm looking at even 3, 4, or 5 different resumes, my eyes are going to get tired. So if you can make it easier on the possible hiring manager, then it's all the better. If you can limit your resume to 1 page, that's like the top of the line, the gold standard. If you can't, and it is 2 pages, it's not a deal breaker. If there's a way that can be, cut down, you'll get that in the review when you're ready for that part of the process. Maintain consistency in the formatting. And what I mean by that is always double check your resume. You might write your resume, get it to a point to where you're happy with it, put it away. If you can, come back to it later with fresh eyes. Are all your bullet points lined up correctly? Are all the dates lined in a uniformed way on the right side of the page? Are all the fonts the same size? I've seen fonts that are only 1 point different, but because I do this every day, I can detect even that slight difference in size, and I make a note of that to the writer. And again, be intentional with your content. And what I mean by that is try to always tailor and customize your resume to the job description. If you're writing a resume to be posted on Handshake or on LinkedIn, that may not be possible. So that's when you just need to do the best you can to have your resume tailored to the industry. And then when you're applying to individual jobs, you take that resume and you tailor it to the job description. Always try to customize that to make it a unique document to the job, because one size does not fit all. And I've heard from employers say that they've gotten resumes that are just too generic, that they don't fit anything that they've applied for, and so they get rejected. But whatever you do, I'm moving to the right side, the right column. Don't copy the job description and just paste it into your resume. That is easily identified, and that could disqualify you from the job. Avoid using references upon request at the bottom of the resume. That used to be something about 20 years ago. If not longer, it's no longer used today. So avoid anything that might reference that. Avoid, as I said earlier, using tables or text boxes or borders, colors, pictures, icons, overly formatted templates. That can interfere with those applicant tracking systems. Avoid using personal pronouns. What I mean by that is I, me, my, we, our, things like that. Resume writing is a different style of writing versus a term paper or a news article or a book. Obviously, grammatical rules are just different with a resume. So you don't have to use, personal first person pronouns. And then if you're trying to work with space on the page, you can go as small as 10 points, like say for your bullet points in your work history. 10 point is the smallest you can go. That comes from my training. Your margins can be set to narrow by using Word, Microsoft Word. So some of these little things might help with spacing. Now, I mentioned earlier that we look at a job description and let you know how a job description might be useful in writing your resume. So a job description is typically, maybe there are 3 sections. The first section talks about the company. The second section will speak about the job itself. This is what the job entails. And then the third section will talk about the skills and minimum requirements. So in this example, what I did was I highlighted certain words in red to identify these are the main points of the job description that I've identified. And the ones that are bolded are ones that are repeated. So these you want to make sure are present on your resume, because the applicant systems, the AI scans, that even the employers, when they're looking at resume, they're going to be using their job descriptions to see, do you match the job? Is resume speaking the same language? You can do this on your own if you want to have a job description and circle, or on your computer, you can highlight, or you can print it out and highlight specific keywords, or just take note of them. If you find this exercise helpful to help tailor your resume to a specific job. Now, this is how you find how to submit your resume to us for review. So if you go to our homepage of Career Services, at the top, you'll see Career Tools. But if you scroll down, you'll see where there will be a button for resumes. But this method is at the top of the page, where you'll click on Career Tools. Then it'll open up another page. You'll find the resource library. Click on Get the Job. Then the next page to the left, you'll click on Resumes. So this sounds like a lot of clicking, but at least you'll see some of the other features that we have to offer. But once you click on Resumes, you'll go to these steps that you'll follow. So you'll follow step 1, which will be to complete our resume course. It's like 20 minutes, I think, maximum. It kind of goes through some of these similar features that we've discussed today. Step 2 will open up all the templates if you want to find a new looking template or a new looking sample to model your own resume from. Then the other steps are just additional features that you can find. Step 5 would be where you would be able to reach out. Now, once you go through step 1 and 2, then you can email your resume and the self-review form. That's going to be found in these instructions as well. So both of those documents you'll want to be able to email to us. Now, if you're in the School of Education and you're studying to be a teacher, the teacher's clinical experience or field experience, they require another kind of a specialized looking resume. And we have those resources at the bottom of this page where we have Note for Education students. So if you are an education student, you'll want to go to the education or the teacher resource page, and also the CE, which is clinical experience, resume best practices. That's a recorded workshop that you watch, and you'll find that helpful. Now it's time for you to come back with any questions you have based on what we've talked about or your own experience. We've had people ask, various questions as far as, again, the number of years, relevant skill sets, things of that sort. But I'll go ahead and WebEx automatically mutes you, and I understand that. But if you want to write in the chat box any specific question, now's the time to do that, and I'll be here and glad to offer any answers. If you need to leave for whatever reason, here is where you can contact us. If you call in for a question, that will go to our voicemail, and just leave a voicemail, and then somebody will call you either that same day or the next business day. But if you do need to leave, you're perfectly fine to do so. I appreciate you listening and watching through. But for the rest of you who want to stay with any questions, I'll be glad to spend a couple of minutes to answer your questions. Thank you all. Thank you, Liz. I appreciate that. Also, if you're thinking of any questions you want to pose, let me put in the chat where you can find other events, and you can go to this link and you can find other webinar events that you might find helpful. Okay. Yeah, that's a good question, Carolyn. If you're working for a temporary through an agency, what I've seen is, let me give you an example. Accountant one, let's see. Ernst Young. I'm going to give you an example. Might be better to look at accounting, account temps agency. Okay, see if that looks good. So you can have your job title. You were placed, job placement in working at Ernst & Young Accounting through Account Temps Agency, Dallas, Texas. And then your bullet points underneath on what you did for that particular job. And then you could just put the year to year. If it was, 2023 to present, for example, something like that. I know it gets a little hairy if you were only there for a short amount of time, for a year or less. If you were there for just, a year or less, then just put the year. And that would be acceptable. I wouldn't put month to month because, it might cause more questions or red flags if you're only there for 3 or 4 or 5 months. Then during the interview, you can talk about your experience. While I was at Ernst & Young working through account temps, I had a number of different assignments. This is what I learned. This is where I grew in my profession. And this is what I hope to offer you if I were chosen for this position. Any other questions or any other points you would like to bring up? Please write it in the chat and I'll be glad to help you out. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording so it doesn't get too long.